Flubber for money.
I'll be a private flubber. Flubbing for money. You sound like Tina Turner? A little bit.
You need a cold open.
Yo, open the fucking door, man. You said you was gonna be there when I came. Been knocking on the door for 5 minutes. I know you up there, man. Stop playing with me.
Everyone, I'm your host Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of This is Revolution Podcast. Thank you for joining us this evening. Before we start, if you're new to the channel, please hit subscribe and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you are alerted whenever we go live. We are constantly adding cross streams with other channels and adding new shows. Speaking of new shows, we're doing our leftist sports show. We're still doing it Beyond the Red Zone. It's going to be a little bit different as far as the airing time and kind of the setup of the show. Now that I'm done with the LA live show, I can get back into getting that out for you guys. And of course, we still have the TIR Fantasy Football League. So if you enjoy what you're getting here on TIR and have the means, become a patron. You get access to the exclusive Champagne Room, and you can join us for our movie nights for as low as $3 a month or $30 for the year. It can all be yours. And as far as the live show, it's up for patrons right now. All 3 hours, plus our musical guest, Precious Child. You can hear all the zany, fun, and smart people talk. It's up right now, and I will be releasing it on the audio-only podcast Thursday, I believe. Now, with all of that out of the way, let's bring in the Tuesday night crew. And I will say this, my co-host, my homie, my dog, has the night off. He's not going to join us this evening. That's okay. He'll be back on Thursday for the news show. But I wouldn't even say a replacement. We just have such a deep bench here on TIR. So please welcome everyone's favorite history professor in the entire state of Missouri. I believe that in my soul. He owns Springfield. Columbia, Missouri has nothing on this man. Please welcome Mean Gene Bajlan.
How are you doing, Jason Miles? It's good to be here on a Tuesday night. Super excited about this show. And, you know, it's good that Pascal got the night off because even thinking of sports put him in a cold sweat. So, you know, so the thought of physical exercise could be terrifying to the man. So he can have a nap and he can watch the show. And, hey, I want to just I'm super excited about something. I want to thank all the people who supported our fundraiser. We did the fundraiser, people supported it, and this is probably the last week you're going to see pixelated Jason Miles because he's going to be getting a new computer, new camera, everything. TIR is going up in the world, and it would not have been possible without people just chipping in and supporting. You know, I know it's tough times, but, you know, I'm really glad we were able to make this happen because, again, for those who don't know, Jason is doing this show on first-term Obama era.
First-term Obama.
First-term Obama era
First-term
technology.
Obama.
First-term Obama. Not
Nothing from 2012.
not gray hair Obama, young stallion Obama. We're talking
Not
about.
Obama sneaking a cigarette, but Obama openly smoking cigarettes. Like, fuck this. This is too much.
And screwing all the homeowners over. That Obama we're talking about. So really thanks to Jessica, who helped out with the fundraiser.
Yes.
Really was important for that.
Big shout out to Jessica that helped make this all happen with the fundraiser. Thank you guys so much. There's a lot of changes. It's not just my computer, but it's also upgrades to pretty much everyone on the show's setup. So
the duck is being executed. Is that
the duck is no more. The duck will be no more. I know I saw some comments. I wasn't there for the Saturday show, which I'm sure people were like, "Oh wow, Jason's not here for this." But it is not a duck. It was a joke. It is actually a computer problem that Tucson is having, and it is beyond an actual animal. So please don't think it's an animal, and she's not rocking back and forth in a chair. It is literally a computer problem, which now the quackness.
She's not quackers. With the quackness is gone. Duck is gone. One day, we'll even be able to get Pascal to have a proper camera shot. So he's not
Pascal's gonna have a proper camera shot. There was actually a conversation him and I had today. It's like he knew. I felt like he knew what was about to happen, and he called me, and I was like, "Yeah, man, we're gonna get you a proper shot, so you don't look like Thanos."
No, he doesn't look like Grandpa talking to his kids, his grandkids.
I wish. So I will address this real quick. We're surprisingly moving a little faster than we usually do. Tucson was trying to do the show on her phone. I'll let you guys in. We'll open up the fourth wall because she was feeling very embarrassed about the whole computer thing, which kind of pissed me off because it shouldn't distract you from listening, because we're still having the conversation with that stuff going on, and we're not going, damn it, shut it off. But anyway, so she's trying to do the show on her phone, and Jean Bajalan makes these beautiful thumbnails that become the backdrop. And Jean also is a professor and an administrator. He's a very busy man, and he's a dad. So he didn't have time to put the picture up. And it took me 25 minutes just to download it. And Tucson had to hear me curse and turn my computer off and on.
You could have just messaged me. I could have.
That would have taken more time to go in, and it was, yeah. Speaking of ducks, the duck wrangler's here. She is the faceless voice of reason, and she's the younger sister I never had. M. Tucson.
Older younger sister. Hello, everyone. I'm here, and hopefully you cannot hear a duck this time. You can cancel the fatwa. Not necessary.
The duck has now been executed and is getting ready to be entered into my fesanjun for Sunday. So, no problems. Gonna be cooking the Persian duck dish with pomegranates and walnuts.
Ooh, no confit.
It's my specialty. It's the old fesanjun.
That actually sounds fancy. It's like Jean's trying to outcook me. Do you guys want to see Jean Bajalan do a cooking show?
We're gonna have a cook-off.
Yes. Want to see that.
They keep telling me so we've been talking about doing these little reel videos, and Tucson keeps saying I should do a cooking one. Should I do a cooking one, Gene?
You should do a cooking one because you were a professional cook.
Yes.
I mean, most of my cooking these days is get noodles, put noodles in microwave, give noodles to children.
Shout out to your kids.
They love noodles. It's a tactile experience.
That's true. That's true. Can I just say, sorry, really quickly, not to make things morbidly obese, but RIP PNB Rock and Takeoff. Very sad.
You just yell out gang turfs?
No, those PNP Rock was a rapper, singer, producer, and Takeoff was a rapper in the Migos.
The Migos guy. Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
I was up early this morning, like early, like 2 in the morning, getting not supplies, but getting the new setup ready. Because we're also going to be doing stuff outside more too. And I saw that, and I actually tweeted it out. I saw Migos play at a Coachella I worked at one year, and I didn't really. Yeah, I'm really such a horrible old man when I'm at a music festival. This is what the young people like.
You're also Jewish.
I am. That's how bad it is. I mean, put some clothes on.
Oh my God.
Oh my God. What are you wearing, young lady? What are you wearing? Take the flower crown off. Cover yourself.
No. We need to get Sarah Mallers back on to do the Bubby impression. She's actually really good at doing her Bubby impression. She's like, oh, he was a nice Jewish guy. He cheated on you. Maybe he was just confused.
Jesus.
I watched some Kanye clip where he was talking about a Jewish doctor misdiagnosed him with mental illness.
God.
He was really just had gas or something.
This is insane. I mean, like, bizarre anti-Semitism runs deep, and it just appears in the most ridiculous places.
It's the King conspiracy theory.
It is the King. It's anti-capitalism for dummies.
That's serious.
It's the Jews. It's like
Kanye even said it. He even said it like oh, what's that comedian's name you people love so much? The Jewish one.
Oh, the Jewish comedian. I wonder who that could be.
For real.
For real. Andy Dick.
Any of the ones.
Andy Dick.
He totally said it. Yeah, he goes, I can't say it. The doctor was a Jew.
He did say that, and it
was like, I there's something I'd like to say. I can't say. He was a Jew.
So he's going through his Stalin phase, where the Jewish.
Yes, 100% Stalin. To great effect.
Can someone please put Stalin's face on Kanye's body or Kanye's face on the Stalin picture? And can you send that to us, because I will make that the TIR backdrop for our social media.
Yalin.
We're going to talk about, someone's asking if we're going to talk about Kyrie. We're going to talk about Kyrie on Saturday. We got Big Waz from Woke Bros and the Athletic. I was going to say the Atlantic. The Athletic coming on Saturday. So that's going to be fun. Uncle Ye. I watched. So I've been watching Kanye interviews since the beginning. I think I was telling Toussaint. Was I talking to you, Toussaint, the other night, where I told you like one of my friends had performed with him back in like the either whenever that Through the Wire broke. What was that? Late 90s, early 2000s?
Yeah.
And they were just talking about how horribly arrogant that Kanye was. And these dudes were like horribly arrogant. And I was like, no way, he's more stuck up than you guys. And he was still not the Kanye that we look at today as like this hip hop wonderkind.
All I can say, he's no Freddie Mercury.
Spoken like a Brit.
He's no Freddie Mercury.
Can I say this to a British man today?
Mm-hmm.
Tuesday, isn't it?
Tuesday, isn't it? You know, actually, Pascal actually does a very good
spot of tea.
You're not bad. You're not bad at all.
I have practice.
Have you seen that video where this white guy goes up to an Asian woman and they're making casual talk and he's like, oh, where are you from? And she goes, oh, I'm actually from San Diego. And he goes, no, where are you from? And she's like, well, my family moved there from the East Coast. He's like, no, where are you from? And she goes, oh, I get it. Well, I'm Korean. And he goes, yeah, I knew it. I know this great place for kimchi and this. And then she goes, oh, where are you from? And she starts and he's like, oh, I'm from, she does the same thing to him. Basically says he's English. And she just goes into a whole crazy sporty.
Do you like fish and chips, sir? Well, one of my friends, a Scottish friend, he was in a nightclub in Beijing, and he saw this Chinese-looking guy with a Scottish flag T-shirt on, and he goes up to him and he goes, "Oh, where? Oh, whoa! How have you ever been to Scotland? You know what's with the Scottish?" He's like, "I'm from fucking Glasgow, mate." I can't really do a Scottish accent. Scotland.
Scotland.
I can only do I can only do the Yorkshire accent, which is like Sean Bean. Sean Bean talks like this. Sean Bean is a legend in Sheffield because he's been thrown out of all the pubs.
Sheffield.
I met a woman the other night from Birmingham.
I was actually born in Birmingham, in Edgbaston, in Birmingham. Excuse me. I remember I once went to Games Day, and Games Day was this big nerd convention in Birmingham where all the Games Workshop models come. We all come down on a bus, and we're parked out in a residential district. All these people getting out of a bus, making noise, and this guy with like long hair and the fading glory long hair, fat, no top on, leans out the window. Excuse me, some of us are trying to get some sleep up here.
Like, Scouse me. What does that mean?
They all talk like the Beatles. They all sound like the Beatles.
In that context? No. What does that mean?
They sound like the Electronic Light Orchestra. I think they're from Birmingham.
ELO is from Birmingham? Did I tell you my cousin was the stylist for that dude?
Oh, wow. I like ELO.
Of course you do.
Jason.
It's your people.
Mr. Blue Sky, please tell us why. Well, anyway, we have a hot guest tonight. We have
a super hot guest.
Look. Let's bring in our guests. So the most popular sporting event in the world is going on right now, and that is the World Cup. Yes, the real football, spelled with a U and only one O. The OG football, if you will, but this year the event didn't take place during its normal time in the summer. It's happening now in fall winter because of the host city, Qatar. From an article in The Nation by Dave Zirin. Normally, the Men's World Cup will be kicking off this month. You wrote this in July, I believe. But FIFA honchos changed the World Cup schedule to accommodate the fact that Qatar is scorching in the summer with temperatures in Doha regularly reaching 109 degrees Fahrenheit. That's 43 degrees Celsius for the rest of you people. When they bid for the cup, Qatar boasted of hosting it over the summer with a state-of-the-art indoor air-conditioned stadium, but that proved to be a lie. Instead, FIFA moved the tournament to November and December, and in the process wreaked havoc on the calendars of domestic soccer leagues around the globe. The fact that the most powerful leagues in the world were willing to reshuffle their plans to accommodate FIFA and their Qatari collaborators is a monument to the brass-knuckle financial power of the Men's World Cup. The 2018 World Cup in Russia raked in $5.36 billion in revenues on the road to more than $3.5 billion in profit. FIFA expects similar profits from the spectacle in Qatar. Let's bring in our guest today. He's a historian and director of the School of Religion at Queen's College. Please welcome Adnan Husain.
Awesome.
Don't freak out, MT. I know your hero is here. So.
This is so cool. I just really like the two of you together. Unfortunately, Gene, you cut off your beard, but maybe Adnan will grow a ponytail.
I cut off my beard. Yep. The beard will come back sooner or later, but I've got a cold, so beard and cold does not go together.
Okay, fair enough. I wouldn't know. So
do you not? I don't know. I've never seen
beard and cold because your face gets wet when you get out of the shower. And
it's not fun. It's not fun. I'm even thinking of cutting off the ponytail as well.
Stop
I'm going
it.
straight up porn stash. Tomorrow I'm going porn stash, and I'm just going to be looking for single moms all over San Diego.
Adnan, can you please intervene? Because I don't know what to do with this.
Are you 47? Do you have a 15-year-old child? And are you divorced? Jason Miles wants your number.
15. We want that motherfucker grown.
Oh, fair enough. So, Adnan, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So, as Jason introduced, we're going to be talking about the World Cup and particularly about this issue of sports washing. That's a term that's used in academia quite a lot, in the media quite a lot. And I think it's kind of self-explanatory. We have the OG sports washing, which was probably Adolf Hitler's Olympics in 1936. But can you talk a little bit about sports washing as a kind of concept, how it's being used, and then we can move on to the specifics of Qatar and what the heck are they sports washing? What are they covering up? What is the function of this World Cup? So let's begin with sports washing as a concept.
Right. Okay. Well, first, I just want to say I'm really thrilled to be here on This Is Revolution. I'm a big fan of the show and have been one for the last couple of years, the Red Zone, Mau Mau Hour, and I'm even a patron, in fact. So
Oh, wow.
people, support the show. It's a lot of fun. And this topic, I hope this is more of a conversation. I'm no expert academic on the question of sports washing. You mentioned that it was something of a academic term of art. I'm a historian of the medieval world, but I happen to be a big sports fan, especially the great, beautiful game of football, soccer for the uninitiated or North Americans. So naturally, I follow the World Cup and I follow a team, in the Premier League. And
Wait, which team?
Okay, Arsenal. I know I'm affiliating with the Southern Softies, but what can I do?
There's only one team, Hull City, and we're not in the Premier League anymore. But
that's okay. Right. Yes. Much to the detriment. The Tigers.
The Tigers, owned by an Egyptian.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Who's, is he sports washing or is he a sports patron? These are the questions. So to talk about that, of course, the term is a pretty recent term. It follows, this kind of form of building on whitewashing, greenwashing, pinkwashing, and so now we have sports washing, and it is essentially the hosting of sports events or the owning of sports teams in order to cover over and distract from, uncomfortable, eminently criticizable, behavior, whether it's human rights abuses or, terrible labor practices and so on. And it's very often associated with authoritarian governments that believe that patronizing sports can burnish their image. And as you pointed out, Gene, it has a long history. And one could say maybe, in fact, the World Cup was itself the first occasion for sports washing in 1934, when Italy was the host under fascist Mussolini. And then you pointed out that 2 years later, the Berlin Olympics was, again, an occasion for Hitler and the Nazi regime to try and present itself to the world in, a more positive light, and also to reflect, its ideas about, the superiority of Aryanism, of the white race, and so on. And so it has a long history, but it seems that in the modern period, it has been taken to, a new level. I do want to point out, or raise one question, which is that it's often associated with, or authoritarian governments, or authoritarian governments are accused of using sports as a way of, distracting from their terrible record. But there is, some distinction to be interrogated here between sports diplomacy and soft power, which is what, democracies apparently do. And it has this more positive association. You can think of, like, during the Cold War, that, for example, sports was a form of diplomacy. There was a kind of idea of, success in sports might somehow show the values of the countries, the democratic, free enterprise capitalist countries would show how liberal democracy translated into, a better kinds of sports culture and success, on the field or in the arena. And also the idea that, sports might be a venue in which people could put aside hostilities and conflict, at least, and build some kind of relationship through, competition in the constraints of sports rather than on the field of war, for example. And so, there have been some positive associations with the role of sports in geopolitics as a form of soft power, wielding cultural influence, and so on. But usually, when we're talking about sports washing, we're talking about it as a negative, where sports is seen to be abused rather than patronized, where the values of sport and healthy competition and all those things that are associated with it in a positive sense are being corrupted to serve the geopolitical interests of a country, for example.
Would you say then? I mean, I think that's a really important point to come with. The problem is perhaps not so much with the term sports washing, but rather the selective way that we apply this terminology to particular regimes, which may or may not be more egregious than some Western regimes, but certainly in the advanced capitalist world, sports serves a political function as the bread and circuses, as a distraction from internal politics. I mean, think about Britain and the Olympics in the early 2010s. This was a time of fundamental crisis for the British state, but sports mobilized on a national level were served as had a political impact on the mood of the country. So, the notion that states use sport in order to bolster their legitimacy seems not to be something restricted to autocracies, but rather that autocracies are see this as a successful mechanism through which to build a positive public image. And just as they adopt other mechanisms and technologies from the advanced capitalist world, so too do sports become a vehicle through which these countries can present themselves as modern, as meeting kind of standards of arriving in the first world, that you can afford to hold these events. And these can have disastrous impacts on countries. Look at the Olympics in Greece and the financial crisis and the burden that the Olympics have on the Greek economy. Look at the expense of hosting a thing like the Olympics, where you're moving it around every 4 years, and you're basically intimidating countries to give so many benefits and goodies away to the hosting organizations. It's like Amazon, right? Amazon's like, we'll build a fulfillment center in your town, but you have to give us all these benefits. And so too with these big sports governing bodies. So, one of the questions, that Pascal actually gave us to think about today was, why would FIFA accept this? But perhaps that's even the wrong framing, that these sports governing bodies themselves are hideously corrupt organizations. So in many ways, this is a kind of marriage made in heaven. It's not Qatar as an autocratic Khaliji kingdom that is the one taking advantage of the poor, innocent, friendly FIFA. I don't know if people are familiar with Sepp Blatter and all the shenanigans that took place, but rather the reverse, where these sports bodies have an enormous amount of social capital. They have something that these regimes seeking legitimacy, countries like Brazil, South Africa, Russia, seeking acceptance and seeking this notion of arrival. This is a way for them to do this. And so the one being abused here in some ways is actually the Qataris, who are having to do all kinds of things, grease all kinds of wheels in a corrupt international sports bureaucracy of football.
Before we talk about greasy Qataris, let's talk about what's going on in the greasiness of Qatar. I think we're kind of ignoring maybe one of the bigger questions is what is happening in Qatar that's making it have to to have the need to sports wash their current regime.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I hope we'll come back to some of those points that you
Oh, we
raised.
definitely will. We have an hour to fill.
You're absolutely right, Jason, that like this conversation can't really go far forward without really appreciating aspects of the Qatari regime and why we're applying the term sports washing, or people are applying the term sports washing to them. And I think it's, first and foremost, it has a terrible human rights record. It is an autocratic government and suppresses dissent and various other democratic sort of rights of affiliation. It has a really horrific position in the world of labor, like many of the other Gulf monarchies. It has a kafala system, which is a kind of sponsorship system in which workers are affiliated with a particular employer who sponsors them, and therefore, as a result, holds all kinds of power over them, which leads to
It's
massive abuse
insane.
and
I actually
exploitation.
saw that in the States, actually in the Gulf of Mexico. That's how they employed several Filipino laborers, was through the sponsor system. And I didn't know anything about it till I got out there. And it's actually a real hideous system if you want to
Yeah,
talk
I
about it
mean,
real
you
quick.
you see basically the thing about the Gulf states is that they are such a concentrated example of a system that is global, in that there are pockets of this being used all over the world. You're just pointing out here in Gulf of Mexico, here even in Canada, where
Mhm.
I am. There is a kind of work visa situation of temporary sponsorship that, of course, vitiates the possibility of any kind of worker organizing or seeking of redress for abuses. And the point is that these are zones that are carved out where they're not, normal law doesn't apply, and that's a whole system has been developed in these Gulf monarchies, where the majority of the population are foreigners. So, for example, Qatar is like 40% Arab, and that's not many of them are not actually Qataris, but Arabs from neighboring countries or Egypt and so on, where people are working. But you have people from all over the world, particularly South Asia, the Philippines, places like this, that are where people are brought in as domestic workers, as
Mhm.
workers on construction projects, where there are no safety standards, and as a result, in the last decade, it's estimated that over 6,000 workers have died working in unsafe conditions in Qatar, and even perhaps scores of people on World Cup projects themselves,
And there were
building.
several, right? Wasn't there a build out? They had to build what, 7 stadiums?
Yeah, there's actually, I'm not sure exactly how many. They had one stadium that is a sort of historic stadium in
Mhm.
Doha, but they've had to build, I think, maybe even more than 7, but you're right. It is an astonishing number in a very short period of time. And some of these are architectural marvels, like with Rem Koolhaas and Zaha Hadid and
Mhm.
other, like, blue plate, gold standard.
I
Um,
have a Zaha Hadid story,
oh, do
but
you?
Ah.
but for the champagne room.
Oh,
Ooh.
right. So
Wow.
something to keep you on the line, folks.
Hmm.
So they built these very quickly, and some of them are quite, marvels of architecture. And there's been greenwashing in addition to sports washing on these, because, as you pointed out in the opening, Jason, that these were supposed to be, built.
Carbon neutral is going to be the first
Yeah,
carbon
carbon
neutral world.
neutral. I mean, that's impossible. I mean, I don't
We're
think.
not using any oil at all. These
Right.
electric trains.
I mean, there are some cool things, like, and there is a video. My son is a big soccer fan.
Mhm.
And so he was telling me about, some of these stadiums. He said, "Oh, there's a stadium that's built just by shipping containers. It's so cool. And then they're going to disassemble it, afterwards, and, use these for housing." And so, there's send it to Africa and use it for housing. And there was some idea that they would take apart some of these stadiums and then reassemble them in countries where they don't have the infrastructure for big sports stadiums and so on, which was all part of the way of selling the proposal. But it's not clear how much of this is actually going to happen. And the reason why it happened is because, of course, of the things Gene was talking about. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But in addition, like the Russian, hosts of the World Cup, the record of Qatar in gay rights, for example, is something that has, received a lot of attention and criticism, particularly since the bid was accepted. Where people recognize that, there is a 3-year prison term that's possible for same-sex relations. And this is something that definitely we need to talk about a little bit more, because I think actually what I have to say here is that I think this is about public identity rather than the practice itself, because, as I think anybody who knows the Middle East, and particularly some of the Gulf countries, same-sex relations, same-sex happens, like it
It's
happens
not,
everywhere.
look, it's not gay if you don't kiss. So
That's right. That's the kind of thinking. I
On
think
the lips.
on the lips, right? Well, like the point is that there is a 3-year prison term for it, but the Qatari official said, "Oh, it's going to be fine. We're not going to, impose these on, foreign guests who come for the World Cup. Gay fans will be welcome. However, don't unfurl rainbow flags in Qatar. Those will be confiscated, but that's to protect you from being physically attacked by others, right?" And so, kind of what's at stake is this idea of public identity, right? That is hostile to the consensus, well, not consensus, but like the dominant, cultural norms of Qatar as a conservative society. Um, it's not that it doesn't happen. It's just that they don't want it acknowledged as a public identity in the public sphere.
They tried to make it seem like they were doing it for your protection, but in reality, it's like, we just don't want that gay shit here.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there's a long history of this, especially as a number of these countries have opened up to tourism. A good example is Turkey in the 1980s, when cheap European tourism came about. They had topless sunbathing, and suddenly, there was a big scandal like, wait, Turkish women are taking their tops off, and it's like, well, it's fine for the Europeans to do it. So you end up with this kind of contradiction where these societies are attempting to impose a conservative moral agenda on the population, but the money from the foreigners is good, so they cut them a lot of slack. So you end up with in practice like two separate legal systems operating, one for foreigners who are indulged to a certain degree. Again, I think you're absolutely right, Adnan. We have this issue of public identity where it's like, look, we're not going to press you on whether you're sharing a room together or what have you, but don't be putting a flag up, or kissing in public, or
right.
this kind of stuff. You can come here, but there are limitations. But of course, for the indigenous population, the level of policing is obviously more severe, both from the state, but also from the social norms prevalent in those societies that are reinforced by the reactionary social agendas.
So are you
government.
two saying, I'm sorry, Gene, but I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
That if you are a foreigner, let's say a bunch of Europeans are there, and maybe it's a gang of LGBTQ Europeans, and maybe they don't have a flag, but maybe they're making out on the street corner, they're going to be fine. But if some browner Qatari people were doing it, it'd be a little different.
I mean, they'd probably get into trouble for making out on the street corner, but they probably wouldn't be. They might just be put on a flight home. Whereas if you're a Qatari,
so they would be or wouldn't be.
No, they would be. They would be in trouble if they did a public display of affection, I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know, Adnan.
I mean, this is what's going to be a mystery, about how this actually shakes out, because they've said that they will accommodate, gay and lesbian, LGBTQ plus, fans, and that it'll be, they'll be welcome to come and enjoy. But, I think, it's interesting that they said, don't make it political, don't come out with public identity like unfurling rainbow flags, right? They will be confiscated, they said, because um, they want to raise the specter that the society as a whole would be dangerous to you if you violate the norms of this conservative society. It's not clear where the boundaries of this, what's going to count. And, one thing that raises the real question about this is that, for a few years, there has been a kind of social conservative movement reacting to the contradictions of this strange, point in the global capitalist order where they're depending on all this, labor and a lot of foreign services and support. So there's more foreigners than there are Qataris living in the country. And so Qataris, feel somewhat beset, by the cultural trends of this cosmopolitan, diverse, world that they've created because of their natural gas and oil resources. And so there's a movement called Izhar Ihtiramak, reflect your respect to the religion and culture of Qatari people. And this campaign has, gone around. It's been revived recently, but it started earlier in this last decade. And the placard or the poster that flyer that was circulated has things like "Don't drink alcohol," homosexuality, don't put this in the public sphere. You should be wearing modest clothing, and don't use profanity. Don't take people's pictures without their permission. They have one that's like, and these are like pictures. These are very interesting. They're a picture with a circle and a line through it, like don't do this. And one of them is dating. It's like, well,
don't bring that here.
Yeah.
Also loud music and sounds and not respecting places of worship. So this is like not actually promoted directly by the government, but this is a kind of like burgeoning civil, social grouping that's scandalized by the fact that in order to earn money and have this elevated, luxurious, support system and lifestyle, they've had to actually bring in all of these foreigners to do all kinds of work that Qataris no longer do or never did. And this contradiction is causing a kind of social, culture clash. And they're very worried, I think, about the influx of many, many hundreds and thousands of people, more than already are normally in Qatari society, as they host this global event of the World Cup with people coming from all over the world.
But would you say, Adnan, there's a kind of double edge to this in terms of the regimes, because obviously I think you framed this really importantly. The way that the Qatari regime is framing this is like, we're protecting you from our society,
Right.
and this has been the core of many of these conservative regimes' pitches to the West. That look, while on one hand they are either directly or indirectly promoting a very conservative social agenda, while at the same time, we saw this with MBS, right, in Saudi Arabia, where you have Thomas Friedman going, well, give him a chance. He's letting the women drive. So they're both feeding the beast of social conservatism through their policies, while at the same time saying, hey, if we go, you'll get something way, way worse.
That's
and,
right.
And we're the ones protecting you.
That's right. And that's been the case with military dictatorships outside of just these Gulf monarchies. This is what Hosni Mubarak promised the West. Hey, give me military aid and support and run interference for me, because, without me, you've got to face these, Ayman al-Zawahiri types, right? And so that was what Gaddafi and others, tried to bargain with, especially in the post 9/11 period. Gaddafi, perhaps stupidly, thought that he might be able to present himself as the antidote to, extremism.
He was working with the CIA. They were renditioning people to Libya. When people go, when Gaddafi was a great anti-imperialist, my bros, like he was like one of the main way stations on the rendition campaigns.
Exactly.
So it is a very interesting contradiction of how they're trying to square their attractiveness to Western liberals?
Well, that's what's interesting, because this is a question that I have: is really, are they trying to, like, well, who's really the audience for the sports washing? I'll just start with like the World Cup bid itself. In some ways, who was paying attention to Qatar, right? I mean, like, it's a small country. Of course, it's, important for its resources, but there are other countries like it. The Emirates, that actually are probably better known, than Qatar. Saudis, of course. In some ways, getting the World Cup is has led to people actually scrutinizing their human rights record, their terrible labor practices, the suppression and oppression of gay people. In some ways, they've opened up this can of worms because they wanted to use. See, I don't think it's that they wanted to use, the World Cup to avoid or wash their terrible image. In some ways, they didn't really have much of an image. I think it's part of a broader strategy that they've been engaged with to wield kind of soft power, to have influence in Europe, that has also raised the stakes because they've come under scrutiny. And so they've had to have a strategy subsequently, I think, to deal with it. And there was a really interesting article that raised the issue about whether this really was an appeal to liberals in the West, which was, by Barney Ronay, a journalist in The Guardian. He's a sports journalist, but he had a very interesting article where he noted that Qatar is the only country that the Royal Air Force has developed a kind of co-squadron relationship with since World War II. Britain has sold numerous, fighter jets and planes, and there is an army of security specialists who are descending and have been working with the Qataris, during the course of the World Cup. And that it is going to be a World Cup about security questions. And I was thinking about this in the context of the Gulf as an environment, especially with the war in Ukraine, the high price of fuel, the problems, with fuel to Europe, it being cut off. The substitute is supposed to come not only from the US, but liquefied natural gas from Qatar. Qatar is one of the main sources that are being counted on to supply Europe. And so its strategic importance has suddenly gone up dramatically. And, it is a point of contestation. And as a result, it is building up a massive military and security infrastructure. In Qatar. So are they really trying to appeal to, Western liberal audiences, or are they really engaged in, something much harder, hard power, and using sports as a way to wield influence diplomatically, in a variety of ways? And I think that the World Cup is only one component. They bought Paris Saint-Germain, the key sports football franchise in a major capital in Europe. During that period, as a result of that, it seems that who was Sarkozy? Sarkozy was very involved in lobbying FIFA to give Qatar the World Cup, and it seemed that they had created a kind of relationship as a result of Qatari investments, not only in the sports franchise, but Qatari investments in France. And this was sort of a quid pro quo to wield influence to give the bid favorable hearing. So
it's like a lubricant. It's a lubricant for
exactly.
and of course, we can't ignore the fact that people are making money hand over fist. I mean, for FIFA's perspective, this is brilliant. You host the World Cup in a country with a lot of capital, a lot of money flowing around, and people, it's going to be more money, less supervision than if you host it in somewhere where there are tighter financial regulations or more scrutiny. So, Qatar, a lot of stuff I'm sure is going under the table, and a lot of people are getting very rich. I mean, from FIFA's perspective, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
It's getting paid under the table with a lot of hot money, and you can do extravagant projects that you might not be able to do in other countries where you have like planning permission laws and all these kind of things. You can get away with a whole lot of stuff. And when it comes to building up these relationships, let's not forget our dear friends in academia who are fleeing to the Gulf as subsidies in the West dry up. Everybody. Northwestern is in Qatar. The University of Ulster is in Qatar. Georgetown is in Qatar. UCL is in Qatar. You name it. Texas A&M is in Qatar.
Wow.
Virginia Commonwealth is in Qatar.
And if they're not in Qatar, they're in the nearby Emirates.
There's these huge there's this huge amount of money just flowing into these businesses, and it's a kind of there's a soft power aspect to it. There is a let's get everybody rich aspect to it, but I think what you're pointing to is there's also a hard security apparatus issue underneath it as well, because I mean the Gulf, as you know probably better than I do, has long been a primary market for British military hardware. Britain was basically one of the first powers to get involved in the Gulf. They gave NASA a bloody nose in Yemen with British technology, British Air Force. They have these deep connections with the military industrial complex, which in the West is increasingly integrated. The American, British, Israeli, it's no longer just like an American industrial complex with its subsidiaries. It's an integrated global industry. So I think that's a really fascinating aspect I hadn't thought of. But MT, you have a question?
I do have a question. And it's been a really great conversation. So my question is a little bit basic and possibly impossible to answer, but does sports washing work? Is it achieving its intended goals? And is it able to do that when people have a word called sports washing and it's a concept that's out there?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, in some ways, perhaps that gets at that audience question, is that maybe people aren't so concerned about, liberal Western perceptions, and there are other kinds of interests operating. The very fact that, I think it was counterintuitive. I tried to point out that I don't know how much Qatar would be under scrutiny without it having the World Cup. Like, how much do people really pay attention? I just think that they have had a pretty comprehensive strategy, which we haven't even mentioned Al Jazeera, sort of trying to get
of course
media environment and provide a different kind of narrative. So,
and I think we have to point out something people don't realize about Al Jazeera. In English, it's like libby lib.
Yes.
In Arabic, it's like some straight up fash like stuff.
Well, it's kind of like a Muslim Brotherhood type oriented.
Mhm.
And
It's like Fox. That's what
yeah.
they say.
And actually, that's something I wouldn't mind asking Eugene about your thoughts, because, of course, while we can think of these Gulf monarchies as a kind of collective, there are some tensions and competitions between them. And it wasn't so long ago that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates had put a blockade on Qatar, and really that you saw the kinds of geopolitical alignments in the Middle East that put Qatar in some kind of alliance with Iran and Turkey as this kind of soft Muslim Brotherhood oriented quasi anti-imperial, though not necessarily. We're talking about a regime that's a lot like the ones that are in the next door neighboring countries. But so there have been tensions between these different groupings. But to get back to your question, Toussaint, it does seem to have worked in the sense that although there are a few articles here and there, the cognoscenti are tutting about the morality of the world's great sport being, captured by a small oligarchic and autocratic government with all these abuses. Nonetheless, people are, excited because it's the World Cup, and people are not mounting some kind of concerted boycott, for example. All of the leagues, despite in Europe and around the world, have altered their schedules dramatically, as Jason pointed out in the David Zirin piece at the outset. In the Nation, they were willing to change, and these are important sports enterprises. These leagues,
Yes.
I mean, they're among the most popular and money-making sports in the world, and they were willing to change their schedule dramatically, interrupt the season, as it were, in order to create a break for the World Cup to be moved from summer, without really a lot of fans are not. They've just sort of accepted.
Nobody, yeah. I mean, imagine if the World Series got moved to January, or the Super Bowl, which is kind of inched deeper and deeper into winter, but the Super Bowl in spring seems insane to say. And I could see, adding the extra game in the season, people got upset about.
Right.
So I'm surprised that no one really got upset about what's going on in Qatar. And I know in one of the articles it talked about Wales, I think, pulled out. But how powerful of a team
Is Wales.
is the
Hey.
Welsh team.
They had Neville Southall as a goalkeeper, one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time.
They had,
But
talking about now.
he's like, he's like
Yeah,
60
Bobby
now.
Hull was a great hockey player. He's not playing now.
But I think that's also an interesting point, because I like to speak to Toussaint's point. Amongst people who follow politics or people who are interested in the Middle East, this is a big deal, right?
Mhm.
But in the grand scheme of things, maybe this is going to work for them. Maybe this sports washing is super successful. Maybe people are going to go to Qatar. There's going to be a couple of incidents. They'll have a great time. Be a couple of incidents they'll report about it in the Guardian. People who already didn't really like football because it was like a kind of like a dirty game for them, they're going to go, see, this is a corrupt thing, and no one's going to change. Most people are going to be like, that Qatar World Cup was crazy, and they'll be talking about the sport. So maybe to flip it all around, like maybe this is actually a genius move, because they get a bit more scrutiny amongst the people who are already going to be giving them scrutiny for whatever reason. This is just another excuse for them to write an article about how they are exploiting Filipino and South Asian labor.
I mean, let's be honest. No one really talks about the exploitation of a country like the Philippines, whose GDP is built around literally the export of their labor force, and it ain't all nurses. So it's I found this whole thing quite interesting, because I think people kind of look at it in passing and go, oh, and then keep it moving. But this is a common theme, especially when it comes to World Cups. I mean, Brazil had a similar situation where they built an entire wall so you didn't have to see the favelas, and now that stadium is empty. So the amount of money that's dumped in. We saw something similar with Japan in the Olympics that just happened, where people were begging Japan not to have the Olympics because COVID was still happening, and Japan was having a bit of an issue with an outbreak. And I was like, well, allegedly there's too much money for us to make here.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I've heard, I'm a little savvy. I'm a little bit tapped into the sports washing conversation. It happens around the Olympics quite a bit. So there was talk at some point on the French, albeit, of having like an Olympic village, one country where we have the Olympics, and that's it. Is there talk of this for the World Cup?
No.
No one can make them do anything.
How would FIFA make money? I mean, this is what it comes down to. These international sports bodies like the Olympics, FIFA, they lock countries into contracts for billions of dollars. They make it that it's a competitive bidding process. So people are racing to the bottom to get these bodies to hold their events there. They actually have a heck of a lot of power, and moving these events from country to country, that's like a core brand proposition of how they're going to make. Like, you have an Olympic village, you build the infrastructure once, you update it from time to time. That's not going to be as lucrative to the parasites that run international sports as getting countries to grovel before them to beg to hold their events. So, like, really, who's the bad guy here? Is FIFA. FIFA's the bad guy here. International football is the bad guy here. Like, FIFA says jump, all the national leagues jump, right? They have to jump. FIFA is the big daddy. You get kicked out of FIFA, that's a whole lot of money you're losing in TV revenues, in merch, in being in the mind's eye. So we have these parasitical sports organizations that cannot be held accountable. We saw that with Sepp Blatter. How much abuse was Sepp Blatter involved with in FIFA? Endless abuse. And they have a product that people want, right? They have a product. They have a product that they can sell, that is unique, that is exclusive. You can't have it's hard enough with the NFL, right? You can't make another NFL. They've tried. You can't make another WWF.
You can't do it. No, it's too powerful. And what's interesting about what you're saying, and I want to lead with this as we go into the champagne room, with the NFL, kind of to buttress your point, you have a player having a literal seizure during Monday Night Football, and the response of the NFL was, "Dude didn't follow protocol. Wasn't our fault. It was the team doctor's fault. Wasn't us. It was him." The player.
What ethnicity was the doctor?
What ethnicity? Well, he was.
That's Kanye's question.
But what I found kind of sad about that is there was all this blow up over, and a lot of finger wagging at the NFL. The player came back, balled out last Sunday, had an amazing game, and there's no more talk about him being put on the field and having a seizure because he shouldn't have been playing after he had a concussion.
The NFL is lawless. I truly feel that way.
Sports leagues all of them are lawless because they can be. Once you monopolize a sport to that level where you are the end all be all, where all the talent is going to come to you. You saw it in 1983 with the USFL. We're going to make a league and we're going to rival the NFL. We got all these mega rich people. And we're going to pay double for the top talent coming out of college. That league folded into 2.5 years. The XFL, which the NFL literally stole camera angles from the XFL. But what was it? At the end of the day, it was a joke started by a longtime NFL guy in pro wrestling. So you just can't get bigger than some of these organizations. You can't have a hockey league bigger than the NHL.
And they don't answer to anyone.
Nope. They are. It's like the WWE. The WWE monopolizes professional wrestling. They buy all the talent and then don't put them on the TV. They just buy up all this talent. Like these monopoly capitalists, right? They need to be controlled. But because something like FIFA is international, they have a lot of monopoly. This is why, it comes down to a macro point I always make. The nation state is the perfect political model for capitalism, because it means if one nation state messes you around, you go to another nation state who's willing to tolerate your BS, right? And that's what FIFA can do, right? You could get national leagues under control. You could nationalize them. You could hand over ownership of football teams to the local communities, to the fans, what have you. You could do all kinds of things. I mean, I believe the Green Bay Packers are a team organized along that model. But with this hyper-capitalist system, I mean, America blows your British people's minds because the notion of a sports team moving from one city to another city makes no sense to them. They're like, wait, How could you move a sports team? Because because these sports teams are seen as an integral part of the society in which they're formed, but it's a hyper-capitalist system. St. Louis doesn't want to pay for doesn't want to tolerate your new stadium.
Yeah.
We'll just move to another city.
Because
and
you're in love
FIFA
with-
does
Yeah.
and FIFA does this on a global level. It is a dirty organization that needs to be shut down.
Well, Gene
And-
Bajlan, I think you just
Killed it.
Here it comes!
So
Without a beard.
shout out
Adnan
to
got me
Beardless
angry.
Gene Bajlan.
He got me angry. He got me angry about FIFA.
Shout out to beardless Gene Bajlan that's still at the office. Professor Adnan Husain, historian extraordinaire, and an all-around gentleman, is coming back on the show because we've been wanting to have Adnan on for some time, and we're going to have Adnan and Pascal have a wonderful conversation about the history of Islam. I'm actually really excited for that. I think I just surprised Adnan with that.
That sounds like fun.
But
Maybe I'm having a conversation that I thought Adnan was a part of, but it was not. That's
maybe-
us having talks about you behind your back.
But Adnan's coming to the champagne room.
Ooh. So, for those of you that are patrons, thank you so much for keeping this show alive. We'll see you in about 5-10 minutes in the champagne room. For those of you that aren't patrons, it's $3. It's $30 for the year. Come hang out with us. Gene Bajlan is going to tell dick jokes.
Oh yeah, can Adnan do a plug? Because Adnan, in addition to being a professor, he has not one but 2 podcasts.
Yes.
Thanks. I just want to say, you can follow me on Twitter at Adnan A. Husain, Husain, and you can find out about upcoming episodes on 2 podcasts, The Majlis, Majlis, which is about the Middle East, Islamic world, Muslim diaspora culture. And our most recent episode was actually with Dr. Gene Bajlan about the Kurdish component in the Iran protests. And also check out Guerrilla History, a podcast I co-host with 2 others about left history for the activist global left. Lots of interesting stuff going on there too.
Well,
Links, I'll put them in the
plug is going
description.
to be on the audio version of this too.
Links are going in the description.
Links are already in the description.
They're going in
You're
right now.
prepared.
I'm prepared.
Sweet.
I'm going in and doing it right as we speak because I'm not messing around.
Well, thank you guys for hanging out with us. We will see you in the champagne room. And Gene, you're never here on Tuesday.
I know, but I have a replacement for a surprise replacement for me on Thursday. An exciting mystery guest.
It's really not a mystery guest. It's like the
A
same
mystery
person.
guest named Adnan Husain.
No, it's a mystery. It's a mystery guest called C. Derek Vaughn.
Always a treat.
I had fun hanging out with Varn. I wish we had more pictures. I wish I was part of the pictures that happened behind the scenes. I was running around and of course doing the meet and greet. People were having so much fun behind the scenes at the live show. Can't wait to do it again. It looks like we're going to be in New York, January. I can't tell you guys the date exactly just yet because we're still waiting for some names to confirm. But we will be doing the live show again. It's pretty much a traveling podcasting circus. So we will be coming to your city sooner than later. Of course, we're hitting up the A markets first because that's just the kind of capitalists that we are.
And then it's going to be Pensacola,
All B markets. Then Boise.
Boise,
Albuquerque.
Idaho.
Salt
by the
Lake
way,
City, are you ready?
Jason, I want to just tell you something before we go.
Yes.
I stole one of your jokes for the class today.
Did it
I
work?
said it did. It killed. I said, we were talking about racial exclusion in colonization. And I was like, which parts of America was there racial exclusion and settlement? And somebody got it. Someone was like, was it the Pacific Northwest? Was it Oregon? I was like, yeah, Oregon. And I was like, and that's why Portland is the white Atlanta.
Oh, accurate.
That's right. That
Nailed it.
kills every time because
Every
even
time.
if you tell black people, they're like,
There's
But
no
on
black
that
people.
note-
There's no black people in my class this semester.
Gene, you're in
Work on it.
Springfield, Missouri, not St. Louis. We are out.
Out.